All right, I think we'll go ahead and get started. Thanks for joining today. This is the tech workshop for ArcGIS Maps for Adobe Creative Cloud. My name is Steve Moore, and I'm a product engineer on the Maps for Creative Cloud team at Esri. And with me today is Anna, and she's also a product engineer on our team. So a little background on what this extension is and kind of who and what we designed it for. Essentially, it's a free extension for Adobe Illustrator and Photoshop, and it lets you bring down spatial content from the ArcGIS platform directly into these Adobe design applications. And I like to use this graphic here that kind of shows the spectrum of users because it really represents what we had in mind when we designed this piece of software. So whether you're on the left side of that spectrum and you're the GIS analyst, you spend most of your time in ArcGIS Desktop, and maybe you just occasionally need to do some fine finishing touch-up work in Illustrator, or you're on the other end of the spectrum. You're a designer that spends nearly all your time in Adobe Creative Cloud applications, and really you just want the data out of ArcGIS, and you're going to do all of your work in Creative Cloud. This extension can really accommodate all those different workflows and use cases. So kind of keep that in mind as I go through the presentation, because depending on your use case, you can leverage this software in different ways to kind of accommodate your needs. So a bit more about what it actually does. As I said, it gives you direct access to authoritative data-driven spatial content from ArcGIS, and then also some other sources that we'll touch on later. So in Illustrator, you'll get vector layers as the output from the extension. In Photoshop, you'll get raster image layers. And one key point as well, and this sort of goes back to that graphic that I just showed on the previous slide, this allows sharing of map assets across your organization. So if you're the GIS analyst on that far left end of the spectrum, even if you don't use Creative Cloud applications, you can leverage this extension to make that spatial content available to the cartographers and the designers in your organization who otherwise may not have access to it, or may not know it exists, or may not know how to interact with it. So a bit more detail on Illustrator specifically. Obviously, you'll get editable vector layers. You can also get image layers in the output. It'll be in AI file format as opposed to like a TIFF in Photoshop, but you can have raster layers mixed in with your vector content. And kind of the three main steps are defining your map, compiling your map, and then syncing or downloading it. And we sort of use the term sync and download interchangeably because it isn't just a download. There is a sort of synchronization between the map that you create in the extension and the content that you download into Illustrator as output. So in the screenshot, you can kind of see two windows. These are the two main panels that comprise the extension. So on the left, it's the Mapboards window, and this is where you create your different map extents and kind of manage them independently from one another. And we use the term Mapboard. It's sort of like you can think of it like a spatially enabled artboard in Illustrator. That's kind of the concept with it. And then on the right is the compilation window. And so this is where you compile your map, where you define your base map, add new layers, bring in file-based data from your local machine if you have that. And then you can do things like set symbology properties, labeling properties, a lot of other things. So Photoshop, it's the same general workflow, those main kind of three steps that I just talked about. The main difference is that you get a raster layer as output. And a key thing to remember, and I'll demo this in just a second, is that you get a new raster layer with each download. So you can download multiple times, but each time you do, you'll get a new raster layer. All right, so I'm going to jump into a quick demo here just to kind of give you an idea what this extension does. And we'll go into a lot more detail later, but just want to show you quickly so you can kind of wrap your head around it, what this actually can do for you. So I'll go through the install process and then those three steps that I just talked about, defining the map extent, compiling and previewing your content, and then actually downloading into Illustrator or Photoshop. In this case, we'll just be downloading into Photoshop. So to start, for the download or for the install process, previously, if you've installed this extension at older versions, you may have installed it from the Adobe Exchange website, which is Adobe's sort of third-party platform for applications and extensions and assets and things like that. But we no longer offer this extension through that platform. We only have our own installers that we provide on the Esri.com product page here for Maps for Creative Cloud. And I'll have this URL at the end of the slides, so don't worry about writing it down right now. But once you're at the product page, if you click this blue download button at the top, it takes you down to the bottom, and there's a Windows and a Mac link. And these are just standard, a Windows MSI installer and a Mac PKG installer. Just run them normally like any other installation process. So now I'm going to jump into Photoshop. And once it's installed, if you click Window, Extensions, and you'll see it here, ArcGIS Maps for Adobe Creative Cloud. So I've got the login page open here. And I just want to quickly go through these 3 account options. So the first is complimentary. This is a free account. You actually sign up for it right here through the extension, and you just need an email address to set up that account. So this gives you free non-commercial use of the extension and gives you access to some but not all of the more advanced features that we've got available. The next option is the Plus account. This gives you commercial access, so you're allowed to use it for commercial use. It's $10 a month, and it gives you also access to almost all of those more advanced capabilities that we provide. And the last option is ArcGIS Online. This is if you have a actual organizational subscription, you sign in with that, and this gives you access to all the features in Maps for Creative Cloud. And I just want to point out there's a link up here at the end of this, choose one of the sign-in options. If you click on options there, it'll take you to our functionality matrix. And this is a really good resource for comparing the different capabilities that you get with each license level, and kind of explains it in more detail. All right, so back to Photoshop, and I'm going to sign in with my ArcGIS Online account. All right, so now that I'm signed in, these are the same 2 windows that I talked about earlier, map boards and compilation. I have them docked together here so I can just kind of tab back and forth, but you can have them free floating or arrange them however you normally would with other windows in Illustrator. And I'll start by searching for a location. We'll go to San Diego, where we would normally be this time of year. I'll zoom in a little bit. And I'm just going to click this draw button in the upper left. And I'll manually just kind of define the map extent that I want to cover. There's a lot of options here. I'm not going to go into them in any detail right now. Anna will do that in a little bit in a later demo. So I'll just take everything as kind of the default, click OK. And now I'll tab over to the compilation window. And so I've got obviously the Esri topo base map here, and really you can think of this as a preview of what you're going to get when you download. So if I click this little flyout, I can change to a different base map. I'm just going to keep it as the default topographic for now, and I'm going to click the sync button, which again, you can kind of think of it like a download process. All right, so if I collapse the window, I'll zoom in a little bit here. So you can see I've just got this single raster layer that's been downloaded of the Esri topo base map. But because this is an iterative kind of process, as I described earlier, I can go back to the compilation window. I'll click Add Content and Add Layers. So a lot of different options here. Again, we'll get into more detail on what these all are in a little bit. But for now, I'm going to go to the Living Atlas, Imagery, and Multispectral Imagery. I'll scroll down to this NAPE color infrared. I'll click Add. Okay, so now it's been added to my map. And I just want to point out these 2 icons here on the left. So we've got this little eyeball that toggles the visibility of the layer. And then we also have this little download looking arrow. And this toggles whether or not you want to download that specific layer. So once you download something, it automatically toggles that download option off. So for topographic, it's been toggled off, but for NAPE, it is toggled on. So you can control which layers you want to download and when. So now I'll go ahead and click Sync again. And if you remember back to that slide about kind of what the output is for Photoshop, each time you download, you get a new raster layer. So now I have 2 layers here. I have the nape color infrared on top of the topo base map. And really at this point, this is just like any other raster content in Photoshop. So anything that you can do to a raster layer, you can do to this map content at this point. So simple demo, but just want to give you a quick idea. Hopefully that kind of shows you at a glance what you can do with this. And as I said, we're going to go into a lot more detail in just a little bit. But for now, I'm going to hand it over to Anna, and she's going to walk through all those steps that I just covered in more detail, and then have a couple demos in Illustrator. So I'll hand it over to Anna.
Great, so we're going to go ahead and get started with some more in-depth demos. We're going to start off by talking a bit about ArcGIS Online and how you can share your data from ArcGIS Online to the Maps for Adobe extension. And then we're going to talk a bit about adding content and the appearance and analysis of your layers in the extension, and then downloading. So we're going to go ahead and get started by jumping into ArcGIS Online. Now here I am logged in as an admin into ArcGIS Online, and I've created a group here called Maps for Adobe Demo. You can find your groups up top in the Groups tab. But here I am, and I've added some content. I have some layers, I have some web maps. You can go ahead and add whatever kind of content it is you're trying to share into the extension. Now the next thing to consider are the other members of your organization. Who do you want to have access to this content? And if there are other members, you're going to go ahead and add them to this group so that they can view this content in the extension as well. And the last thing to consider are these tags down here. You can see I have this M4CC tag added. All I did was click Edit and then type in M4CC and select Save to add that M4CC tag to your group. And that's pretty much all you need to do inside ArcGIS Online to access your data in the extension. So again, make sure the proper members are added to your group and add that M4CC tag as well. So now we're going to open up Illustrator. I'm going to open up the extension through Window, Extensions, and our extension is located there. Once you have it downloaded, and I'm going to pull over the login window. And I'm going to log into my ArcGIS Online account. And we're going to wait for the extension to load. And here we are, our map boards window and our compilation window will appear. And you can go ahead and move these windows around the extension. They work the same as other panels in Adobe, so you can go ahead and dock them wherever you'd like and adjust their sizes to whatever works best for you. So we're going to take a look at this import option here so that we can find that ArcGIS Online data that we just shared. So you're going to go ahead and select Import and then go to From Layer. And here you'll see all the libraries you have access to and all the layers that you can create your map board from. And in here we're going to go into the My Organization option, and here you'll see all the groups that you are a member of. And you can see here the Maps for Adobe Demo group that we just shared is located there, and here is one of those layers. The only layer that I had in that group is available to add, and we can create our map board based off of that layer. You can also go ahead and add import from a web map. So again, you have access to those libraries. If you go into My Organizations, you can see your groups. And let's take a look at that Maps for Adobe Demo group again. Here are all the web maps that I had inside of that group. So again, you have access to your ArcGIS Online data pretty easily. And then the last option for importing a map board is from a file. So from a local file from your machine. Those are our import options. The next option is the draw option. I'm going to talk about that quickly. Let's open up our slides again. So let's talk about defining our map board. So again, a map board is similar to an artboard, except we're making maps, so it's a map board. And there are multiple ways to define your map board. You can import them, as I just showed you, from those various options, or you can draw your map board as well and define your extent and scale through the draw feature. So let's take a look at that. Back in Illustrator, I have the draw option selected, and you'll see your cursor has this draw tool. And let's say we want a map board around kind of the west-southwest of the US. Once you release your mouse, you'll get this map board options pop-up window where you'll see lots of fields with populated numbers. And these numbers will get populated automatically if you're drawing your map board. And let's just take a look at what that means. You can also go ahead and change your map board name. I'm going to leave it. But let's just say we're going to leave our fields populated with these numbers. We're going to click OK. Let's see what that means for us. You'll see your compilation window will draw a map. And you'll also see that your compilation window adjusts accordingly if you move your map board's window around, or your map board's area. So we left all of those settings just the way they were. And you'll notice that the Set Artboard to Size 2 option was selected when we clicked OK. What does that mean? If I try to change the size of this map board or try to move it around, you'll notice up top here that the scale of your map board is changing, but your width and your height are remaining the same. So this is the first option that we have. Our dimensions are going to remain the same, they're locked, and our scale is going to adjust based on how big and how small we make this window. Now if we go back to this Modify Map and Output Properties option, you can also select this Set Map Level of Detail to option. And here you'll see multiple scale options. So let's say we want to set our scale to a country level. Or did it say, it says county, not country. County. So let's say we want to set it to a county level. And now we try to adjust our map board. You'll see up top again that our width and our height are adjusting, but our scale is staying exactly the same. So it's just something to keep in mind when you're creating your map board. You have a couple options here, whether you want to change your width, your height, or your scale is up to you. Now there's also, I didn't mention that there are preset artboard sizes that are based off of your typical Illustrator artboard sizes, artboard sizes. So if you want to go ahead and select one of those, you certainly can. So I'm actually going to delete this map board. We're going to take a look at our slides again. So now that we understand how to make our map board and how to set it properly, let's take a look at our compilation window, which again is exactly what it sounds like. We're going to compile our data in the compilation window. And again, there are multiple options for browsing web maps or layers, and you can also add directly from your machine with text files, CSVs, SHP files, GPX, KML or KMZ files. And we're also going to take a look at add places and a bit of analysis. So let's jump back into Illustrator. I'm going to zoom out so that we see all the United States, and I'm going to draw an area around the US, and I'm going to set my scale. I'm going to set it to states and provinces. And you can see our compilation window is adjusting. If I shift, it shifts. And then I'm going to minimize our map boards window because we're not going to be working in it anymore. And let's make this a bit bigger so we can actually see what's going on. So right now, all we have is a base map. We have a topographic base map set right now. You can also go ahead and select various other base maps. We have 2 vector base map options. So if you're interested in editing your base map in Illustrator after syncing, these 2 options are great. You get nice organized layers and it makes your editing workflow much easier. And then the rest are kind of your typical raster base maps that you're used to seeing in ArcGIS Online or Pro. We're just going to keep our topographic map right now. And then we're going to take a look at this Add Contents button up top, and we're going to click it. And we're going to look at this Add Layers option. And we saw a window very similar to this in our Mapboards window. But instead of setting our mapboard, we're going to add data and compile our data through this window. So I'm going to go ahead and look at my favorites. These are all layers that I've favorited through all these libraries. You can just go ahead and click the star here and it adds it to your favorites. So these are just some of my favorites. I'm going to go ahead and add some layers. I'm going to add this US freeway system layer. Bam, you can see it got added in the background there. I'm also going to add this National Park Service regional boundaries layer. This map actually has nothing to do with the National Park Service, but it was a handy layer, so I decided to borrow it for this demo. I'm also going to add this USA states layer. And I think that's all I'm going to add for my favorites. We're going to stick with those for right now. So I'm going to close this window. And you can see our layers got added. I'm going to rearrange them a bit so we can see them more clearly. Let's add our freeways to the top. And now let's take a look at our symbology. Let's say we don't really like orange highways. I'm not a fan of orange. Sorry for anyone that likes orange. Let's just change our highways to a brown color. I think that's a bit more appropriate. So super easy. All I had to do was click change style and you get all these options. You can also go ahead and symbolize your data based off of all of the attributes that are tied to your data. So I'm actually not going to do that with this layer, but just so that you can see, if you want to go ahead and symbolize based off of the road class attribute, you totally can, and it'll adjust your map accordingly. So I'm going to cancel and keep everything just one color, just brown. And then I'm going to look at this National Park Service regional layers, or regional boundaries layer. And I'm going to take a look at this filter option here. And this is where you again have access to all of those attributes and you can filter out your data to make it work best for you. So I'm going to go ahead and look at the region option here and filter out by region and make sure my region is selected to the Midwest. And I'm just going to click apply filter and bam, it adjusts my data. Now I have only all of those features that had that Midwest attribute tied to them. Super easy, super quick, just a couple clicks and all of my data is just the way it's supposed to be. Now I'm also going to go ahead and change the style of my states. Again, you have access to all of that attribute data in there. I'm going to show just location, so all of them are going to be symbolized the same color. I'm just going to make it a light gray with a darker gray border layer. Actually, I'm going to make my outline a little bit bigger. Make it 1.5. Cool. Let's just zoom in a little bit on the Midwest there. So here's some of my data. looks good. This is what I want. I'm going to go ahead actually and delete my base map because I don't really need it. And now for the fun part, we're going to go to the Add Places option. And the reason I decided to highlight the Midwest here is because I'm going to be looking at all of the culvers in the country. And I'm sure those of you that are familiar with the Midwest, those of you that are from the Midwest, know what Culver's is. It is a fast food chain restaurant. It is one of my favorite places in the entire world. So I'm going to go ahead and add all of the culvers that are within my extent. And it's super easy to do this through the Add Places option here. You can go ahead and search for anything you'd like. Addresses, coordinates. I'm going to search for culvers. And you'll see it's loading. It's loading all my data. Apparently within this extent there are 576 culvers. So that's a lot. That's awesome. And then you'll see as I hover over these locations, you can kind of see right in this area, they pop up individually, and you can go ahead and add individual locations if you're interested. But I'm going to go ahead and add all of these just by clicking Add All. Super easy, took like 1 second, and there they are. I have all of my culvers. I'm going to change my style a little bit and change it to blue. Cool. So now we have our point data for all of the Culver's restaurants in the country. And I'm going to add some more data as well. We're going to go back to Add Places, and I'm going to add individual points. So I'm going to add Redlands, California. And I didn't spell it right, so I'm going to try that again. Here we go. It added Redlands as a point. We can make it a little bit bigger if we want to, just so we can see it a bit better. Redlands is down here, so let's just take a look. There it is. Cool. And then I'm also going to add another location in Iowa, which is in the Midwest. Dubuque, Iowa. Shout out to Dubuque. I'm going to add Dubuque as a point as well. Change the style a little bit. Let's make it a bit bigger. Maybe change the color because I said I didn't like orange, but we're making it orange because all these points are blue. So you can see there's Dubuque right on the Mississippi River in the middle of the Midwest. And now we're going to do a little bit of analysis. I mentioned you can do analysis within the extension, and I'm going to show you exactly what I mean by that. So let's say we want to do a route, visualize a route for a road trip from Redlands to Dubuque. What we're going to do is go to our Redlands point, and you'll see here we have multiple options for analysis. Visualize route, create geographic offset, which is like a buffer, visualize travel times, or add demographic data. And I'm going to say visualize route. And I'm going to go ahead and select my destination to be Dubuque. We started off in Redlands. I want to go to Dubuque. I'm going to set it as a drive time analysis, and we're going to follow streets. And I'm just going to click apply. And it's going to go ahead and calculate a route for us. One thing to keep in mind is that these analysis tools do use credits the same way they would in ArcGIS Online. So just keep that in mind if you're doing analysis. Keep in mind you might be using some of your credits. So we're going to go ahead and wait for it to process and visualize our route. Almost there. And boom, there it is. We can see it We can see our route. Let's zoom in a little bit. Red Outer Redlands. Oh, it looks like the closest Culvers on our road trip is in St. George, Utah. So you guys know where to find me. I'll be hanging out there. And we can see, you know, it created that route for us just the same way your Google Maps or whatever would create a route. And we were passing lots of Culvers, so that's really good for me to know. I will not get hungry on this road trip. Cool. And one more thing, let's just add some labels also since we're here. Super easy. All you have to do is click Manage Labels. Boom, it added a label to Redlands. Super easy. You can go ahead and change the size if you want, or edit all of that in Illustrator. Once you're ready, let's add one to Iowa as well. Boom, added. Super easy, super quick, the click of a button. It's ready to go. So let's say that this is what we want to sync and what we want to bring into Illustrator. All you're going to do, before we get to that actually, I forgot. I'm going to mention this. We do have a setting where you can reproject your map on the fly. You have just about all of the projections you can think of are available to you. You can go ahead and search. So let's say we want an Iowa-related projection. You can search for it. Super easy. Select it and click OK, and it'll reproject your map on the fly. So just something to note. Reprojecting is available to you guys. So once we're ready to go and we say this is good, we're going to bring it into Illustrator. The next step is to take a look at our slides, because I'm going to talk about it before I show you. So we're going to sync our map, which essentially means pulling it into Illustrator. And we'll take a look. I just mentioned the projections. You can reproject and sync that map if you'd like. But we're going to take a look at our layers after we sync, and how it's embedded into our file, and then optional processes as well. So let's take a look back into Illustrator. All you do is click Sync. I already synced this map because I already did. And we're going to take a look at it right here. You can see all of our layers are just the way they were in our map compilation window. And let's take a look at our layers here. Here you can see they're all organized, and it's just ready to go, already organized for you. You don't have to do any of the labeling. All of your data is ready to go, your points, your lines, your polygons, and nice and organized, just the way we're used to working in Illustrator and used to working in Pro. Organizing your files is very important. So all of that information is ready to go. And it makes editing all these vector graphics super duper easy and super efficient. So one last thing I'm going to mention here inside the extension is, oops, wrong window. Where's my compilation? There it is. So another thing I'm going to mention is this option here, which is our processes window. So if we go ahead and open that window, you'll see a bunch of processes that we have available to you. Things like customizing your symbols, customizing brushes, swatches, creating a map scale, joining lines, which is great if you have lots of line segments that you want to join together, or creating a map legend. So I'm just going to show you quickly this map legend option. What you're going to do to get this to work is you're going to go to your layers and you're going to turn off all the layers you don't want in your legend. So let's see, I'm going to turn this one off, I'm going to turn this off, I'm going to turn this off. And so I have a couple of my layers on, a couple of them are not visible. And then once you have the ones on that you want in your legend, you're literally just going to click Create Legend. And bam, all of a sudden down here you'll see, let me scroll down, we have our legend created in a matter of, I don't even know how long that took, not even a second. So that is a time saver. Super easy, super quick, literally took less than a second. And we do create them down here instead of on your map, so you can go ahead and move them wherever you'd like. And you can just turn all your layers back on when you're ready to go back to your editing workflow and add your legend. Your legend is there, ready to go. Great, so those are kind of a couple of those features that that we've been mentioning here. Obviously there are a ton more, but we don't quite have time to discuss all of them. So I'm going to quickly jump over to our next topic, which are the ArcGIS Pro Exports. So new to ArcGIS Pro, we have a new export file type called the AIX file type, the Adobe Illustrator Exchange file type. And this allows you to bring in your ArcGIS Pro files from Pro into Illustrator as organized files. So a couple things to note here. You have to have ArcGIS Maps for Adobe 2.0 or later for these files to process, and ArcGIS Pro 2.5 or later as well. So I'm going to go ahead and open Pro quickly here and show you a quick map that I created. So here we are. I have a map showing Anna's hummingbird range. If you're wondering, oh, did she choose it because it has the same name as that bird? Yeah, I did. I think it's pretty cool. There's a bird named after me. That's awesome. So here we have a map, and you can see I have a bunch of layout elements added to this map. A picture, some text, scale bar, north arrow, all the goodies, a legend, and then inside my map I have some point, line, and polygon data. So let's say this is good, ready to go. I want to bring this into Illustrator. The workflow is super simple, and I'm sure a lot of you are already familiar with it, but you're just going to go Share, Export, and then inside this file type there is a new file type called the AIX file type that I mentioned. You're going to have that file type selected. You can go ahead and edit all of these parameters if you'd like, and you click Export, and that's all you have to do. Very, very simple, very easy. So again, Share, Export, and make sure you have that AIX file type selected. And then you're going to come back into Illustrator, and you're going to make sure you're logged into the Maps for Adobe extension, and you're going to go File, Open, and browse to wherever it is you saved that AIX file type. You can also filter through file types. You can see here there's the ArcGIS Adobe Illustrator Exchange file type. If you want just your AIX files to show, you can click that. And then you just find it and click Open. And I already opened the file here, so we'll take a quick look at it. And there it is. Let's take a look at our layers. You can see it's ready to go, ready for you to design with. Everything's organized. Our vector layers are all selectable and editable, just the way we organize them in Pro. So super quick, and this is a workflow I know a lot of you have been waiting for. A lot of you have been using ArcMap because this workflow wasn't available to you, but it is now. So feel free to use that as well. So back to our PowerPoint. Just a quick note about what's coming next for us. We are working on support for Portal. So that's something we've been working on for some time now, and that will be available to you guys in the future. And we also have an extension for Adobe XD coming out, which is very, very exciting. So just a couple things to keep in mind. And then finally, to close things off, here are some additional resources for you where you can download and install the extension, YouTube demos and tutorials, our GeoNet page where you can feel free to ask questions, Also our doc page as well. And then feel free to follow us on Twitter and Instagram, social media, to keep up with the latest and greatest. And that's all we have for you for demos, so thank you for sticking around.